The story begins with a beautiful young girl traversing through a forest while searching for the herbs she was looking for. She finds them, and then when the clock tower strikes, she rushes back to open her shop. That's right, folks, this lady is an herbalist. Her name is Shirayuki, and she lives in the country of Tanbaran. Though what makes Shirayuki stand out is her odd yet refreshing red hair. This leads to her always being the center and, of course, often makes her somewhat uncomfortable as well. Unfortunately, things take an unpredictable turn when the greedy prince named Raji asks his subordinate about who's the most beautiful girl in the kingdom. And when he replies about Shirayuki and her red hair, the prince chooses her to be his concubine. This makes things irrationally difficult because she, for one, doesn't want to be subjected to such a fate, so she makes the decision to leave the country. She immediately makes the medicine for her regulars, leaves them at the shop together with letters, and then prepares to leave. She also cuts her gorgeous long hair and leaves it behind encased in a ribbon. From there on out, it's a long way ahead. But she eventually leaves the borders and ends up coming across a considerable mansion right in the middle of a forest. She tries reaching out, but it looks like there's no one home. Tired and hungry, the girl simply falls asleep, and it isn't until the following morning that she wakes up. She was just stretching and yawning when she heard a boy's voice coming from a distance. Well, that's when a white-haired young man named Zen pops up right in front of her and falls right away. Together with him are two of his companions named Mitsuhide and Kiki. While they are a little suspicious of Shirayuki at first, the atmosphere becomes quite warm when she compassionately treats his wounds. She then takes shelter in that house together with them, though Zen is curious as to why she ran away. Shortly after, a big basket of apples arrives at their place, and unexpectedly enough, the ribbon Shirayuki tied to her hair is tied to it. This gives off plenty of alarms, and Shirayuki is definitely upset. When she reveals how Prince Raji wants her, Zen gets quite angry and ends up hitting his injured arm on the table. The atmosphere is quite thick. Shirayuki knows that it's not easy to run from the prince. She picks up a bad apple and makes an apology how this apple is no good anymore. And seeing this, Zen just straight up bites the apple while it's still in her hand, hence proving her analogy wrong. Though it might not have been a good idea to give the apple for poison, and suddenly collapses. Immediately, a soldier pops up at the doorstep and tells Shirayuki that if she wants the antidote, she better return to Prince Raji. Seeing how Shirayuki had no choice, she obliges. Prince Raji is fascinated by her red hair and ends up making quite a few smug remarks. Shirayuki counters his smugness with her confidence, but she knew she had to accept his demands to be his concubine. Though suddenly, Zen appears out of nowhere together with his two companions. He states how he has gradually been building immunity to poison and also declares himself as the second Prince of Clariness. He then tells Raji that if he doesn't want the news of him poisoning another country's prince to leak out, he better give up on Shirayuki. Both Shirayuki and Raji are taken off guard. Raji pathetically gives up on her, and so Shirayuki returns back to Clariness together with Zen. The good ending. But wait, the story has only just begun. After treating Zen for the poison that was left in his system, Shirayuki gets herself a place in the city and is ready to start looking for a job as an herbalist. It's not that easy considering how the local herbalist shop wasn't looking for any more hands, but the owner suggests that she take the court herbalist exam. Another young fellow who is going to take that exam was in the shop as well. Shirayuki resolves herself to prepare hard for the exam. She and Zen travel to a nearby island so that she can gather a few herbs and study some. They share quite a few wholesome moments on their way there before Zen bids her farewell for the day. But while she was exploring the forest, someone named Mikaya catches her off guard and abducts her. He's planning on selling her to a rich man because, of course, she has unusually beautiful and red hair. However, Shirayuki wasn't going to sit around, as she was tossed around. She spent the entire night in the cell just rubbing her ropes with the wall. And when Mikaya comes to give her some food, she immediately frees herself and ends up trapping him in his own cell. Still, it wasn't enough to stop her. The man persistently continues to chase her inside the old mansion. Even when she uses some paralyzing herbs to paralyze him for some time, he gets away by jumping outside the window. Mikaya still pops up once again. Meanwhile, Zen visits Shirayuki's new place, but is told by the landlady that she hasn't come back. This gives Zen some anxiety because it's already been a day, so he goes to the rescue. And now Mikaya was about to catch her again, Zen appeared to rescue her once again. Shirayuki's heart thumps a few beats and then they hand Mikaya over to the royal guards. Looks like Mikaya went through a lot in the past, and the reason why he tried to capture Shirayuki is to return his family as well to what it used to be. As you can see, Zen and Shirayuki have become quite close. Zen's companions, Bibi and Mitsuhide, invite her to the place so that she can talk some sense into Zen, who has been working non-stop ever since he was scolded by the elders. He's not even eating or sleeping. And so when Shirayuki's appearance forces him to take a break, the man immediately falls asleep beside her. By the time he's woken up, Shirayuki had already gone back home. Though it looks like Shirayuki's closeness with the prince was attracting much doubt and cynicism from others, especially Lord Haruka, who confronts the prince and tells him that she's only after his status as a prince. But of course that wasn't enough to make the prince budge at all. And so the man ends up hiring a spy who can get rid of Shirayuki by scaring her away. But that doesn't work out well either. Following this, Lord Haruka confronts Shirayuki and threatens her with his sword while accusing her of breaking into the castle. But this doesn't make Shirayuki budge in the least. She remains unwavered as she declares that she will keep coming to the castle as long as her friend keeps calling her. If he has a problem, he'll have to cut her down. Though there was no need, the spy he had hired named Obi ends up switching sides and declares how it was all a ploy to threaten Shirayuki into not coming to the castle anymore. Zen also appears at the scene and puts Haruka in his place. As for Obi, he ends up deciding to pledge his loyalty to Prince Zen. But the prince wasn't just going to trust the spy. He asks Mitsuhide and Kiki to keep an eye on her for the time being. Anyways, days go by, and it's finally time for our protagonist to take the court herbalist exam. She's assigned to a greenhouse, and the test begins. Zen comes to have a look at what Shirayuki's doing, but ends up getting locked inside together with Shirayuki. Looks like one of the other contestants was behind this, attempting to make Shirayuki fail. But this wasn't enough to make her fail. Both of them talk and work through the night, until they are discovered in the morning. Of course she passes and is assigned an apprentice to a child prodigy named Ryu. Just like that, Shirayuki is now a full herbalist apprentice. She tries to be formal during their first interaction, but Ryu tells her not to bother, seeing that he's just a kid. Though it was this moment and a few others which led Shirayuki to realize that Ryu is inept at reading people, and is a complete introvert. Same. In fact, his odd behavior causes others to think he's dangerous. Rumors even suggest that he only ever works with poisonous plants. When one of them says this in front of Shirayuki, she flips and asks the individual to take it back because poisons are often used to treat illnesses as well. Ryu asks her not to worry because he's useful. However, she calls him foolish and leaves the room. Shortly after, he witnesses Shirayuki crying over some documents, and is completely bewildered. She has no idea what to do, so he goes and gets Zen. As for the reason why she's crying, the documents state how Zen was deliberately poisoned all throughout childhood just so he could build his immunity. However, the horrible side effects this might have caused to his body end up making her cry. When Zen gets to the scene, she isn't ready to face him, but he embraces her and compassionately tells her that there's no need to worry because he's okay now. Following this, Shirayuki and Ryu make up as well. In the end, Ryu is just a kind yet misunderstood kid. Later, there seems to be a dire situation at Fort Laxdo. All of the soldiers have mysteriously fallen ill, and so Shirayuki comes to the scene to resolve the situation. As it turns out, the root cause is the burning of toxic wood. Some bandits took advantage of the situation, burned the wood to make an opening, and plundered plenty of goods. But this calls for Shirayuki's expertise, and so she works herself to the bone tirelessly in attempts to create medicine for the soldiers. And finally, treats them all. Zen and his fellows, on the other hand, including Obi, just go and wreck these bandits, and once all is well, Shirayuki and Zen's relationship further deepens. Of course, she also earns plenty of respect from the soldiers she saved. Zen commends her about all she's done and gently kisses her hand in the presence of Mia. This flushes Shirayuki into oblivion, but the two just sit in the dark, holding hands. But just when the ship was sailing, the two were closer than ever, the plot improved once again. In actuality, the Crown Prince of Clariness, named Izana, returns to the castle without announcing his visit. He's aware of Zen's growing relationship with Shirayuki, but seeing how Shirayuki is somewhat of lower status, the man harbors good intentions. He ends up inviting Prince Raji to come and visit Clariness for a tea party, and then he also inquires them both about their relationship with each other. This sends Shirayuki's head in a mood that she's unsure herself and might end up having to part ways with Zen. But it looks like Izana's plan doesn't work that well. During the tea party, Prince Raji ends up misunderstanding Zen and Shirayuki's relationship and simply states that both of them are engaged to each other. He just wanted to make sure his previous embarrassment doesn't become a topic of interest. Zen, of course, confronts him about it and asks why he'd say that, to which Raji tells him that it was just to hide his past history with that. But the man also tells Zen that it's pretty clear how they're both in love with each other. He advises Zen to make her his fast, otherwise she might end up leaving him one day. He also tells him that he'd be delighted to make her happy instead, considering how that's what his brother wants in the first place. It was indeed necessary for Zen to hear this, but for the time being, he goes to his brother and clears up the misunderstanding. This was hard on Shirayuki as well because she was worried she might be sent off with Prince Raji, especially after considering what he said. She rushes to find Zen, but he isn't there. But just when she was about to leave, Zen called out for her from the second floor. In the heat of the moment, she climbs up a nearby tree and jumps right towards Zen, giving him a bit of a tight hug in the process. They hold each other for a while. Zen shares a short story from the past, and then as he's escorting Shirayuki back, he tells her what Prince Raji stated during the tea party. He also warns her that this'll make her become the center of attention even more than before. But she is just happy she won't have to go back. And she doesn't care what others think as well, because the two of them know it's not true. Hearing this, Zen hugs her once again. As for the gossip, it has indeed spread far and wide throughout the castle. Prince Raji and his aide are taking a tour of the medical wing, but when the man realizes that he may run into Shirayuki, he gets a stomachache, and of course, ends up bumping into her. It's a bit of an awkward moment. She had medicine in her hands, he thinks it's for him and tries to take it, but ends up getting scolded because it's for flesh wounds. He also goes on to suggest that he should be more careful as a prince. He's kind of offended, but Shirayuki tells him as it is. She won't respect him until he can become a prince in her homeland in a way she can be proud of. Prince Izana was nearby. He witnesses this transpire and suggests Shirayuki to return to her homeland, but of course she doesn't budge. She looks the prince right in the eye and tells him that she won't back down. Prince Izana was taken aback by her attitude and ended up gently kissing her forehead. He also asks if she's come to dislike Paris. No, she doesn't. It's the country where she met Zen, after all. By this point, Zen has come to trust Obi, and seeing how Shirayuki might be the center of scorn because of their engagement gossip, he asks Obi to be her guard and to protect her if need be. Later, Obi and Shirayuki appear to be having a conversation where Obi asks her if it would be better if Zen wasn't a prince. Shirayuki ends up getting a bit angry and tells him to watch what he says. This could easily be considered offensive, but Zen and his right-hand man, Mitsukide, end up overhearing this conversation and start reminiscing about the past. The moment when he was first appointed as Zen's aide, and how they have grown and gotten closer to each other throughout the years. Later, Zen is doing some paperwork when his mind sort of loiters around. He thinks how rare it is for people to form genuine connections, but when they do, they want to hold on to them, no matter what. Meanwhile, Shirayuki was fast asleep after accidentally taking in some alcohol. When she wakes up, she's still kind of dazed. Obi is still by her side. When she looks for a horse but gets upset after realizing she's been invited, looks like she's worried about those soldiers and wants to go back to check on them. Obi reassures her that when he was away from the castle under Zen's orders, he went and checked up on them. They're all doing fine, and the team asks to send a message as well as a few presents to Shirayuki. Zen, on the other hand, realizes that it's finally time for him to grant Obi an official position as his own private messenger. That's right, folks, our boy Obi is finally getting the appreciation he deserves. Later, when she's in the castle garden, Shirayuki comes across a young girl from a southern island named Kiharu, and her pet bird named Popo. Looks like she's come all the way from the island to request something of Zen. It has to do with preserving the birds, and that's why the southern island should be declared a nature reserve in an attempt to keep the hunters away. However, the matter is not that simple, and unless she can prove the significance of those birds, Zen can't respond positively to her request, especially considering how hunting them is more useful to the economy of clarinets. And later, after a quick conversation with Shirayuki, he proposes a test to see if those birds can be tamed to become messenger birds instead. Kiharu agrees, but asks Shirayuki to ring the bell of the test instead because it looks like she doesn't trust Zen enough. But things get more complicated when a lord attempts to make a deal with her so that Kiharu's bird is made to fail the test. In the end, there's only 2 minutes left until Kiharu's bird Popo was supposed to return from a watchtower 10 kilometers away. But just before time ran out, Popo heroically returns, and just like that, his species is declared a species of messenger birds. As for the boy to make the bird fail the test, Zen is informed of the unnecessary involvement in how Shirayuki ended up having to suffer once again. That lord is arrested while he himself rushes to find Shirayuki. When he finally finds her, he sees how she had suffered an injury on her arm. Though she doesn't hide it, Zen simply smiles at the sight of Zen. And guys, the moment we've all been waiting for finally happens. Zen becomes overwhelmed with emotions. He takes a step and steals a kiss from Shirayuki. When he finally opens his eyes, he notices how it's not just shooting in his hair, her face had turned red as well. He kinda starts feeling guilty and apologizes, but when he asks if she feels the same way, Shirayuki silently nods. Though in the days following this moment of truth, she can't help but become entirely red at the mere sight of Zen. And seeing how she had yet to give Zen a straight answer, he starts becoming somewhat anxious as well. Meanwhile, Mitsukide are tasked to go to Kiharu's island to set things in order. Though sooner than later, Zen comes across Shirayuki in the forest. She tries to run away, but he runs after her. She tells him that she isn't ready to face him yet, considering how the kiss surprised him and all. Zen then doesn't find it be too pushy and simply recalls the time they first met together with her after getting permission to stay with her for a while. Zen talks about a lot of things. After a few moments of realization, Shirayuki sorts out her was just confused when she realized that her feelings were beyond what we call a friendship, and how she became unable to look at him the same way again. Zen then kneels in front of her and asks for her strength. He holds out his hand, promises that he'll always protect and love her, and then asks her to be with him. Shirayuki gets kind of teary-eyed. She wipes them and lets Zen hold her hand. He simply says, "Thank you, Shirayuki." This is followed by a moment of silence as they kiss each other once again. Then there is a festival. No, not a festival to celebrate their engagement, rather just a regular festival. Zen wants to enjoy it with everyone, and so he disguises himself as a guard. However, as it turns out, the actress who was supposed to play the lead role had an injury, so Shirayuki is chosen in her stead. Of course, Zen wasn't quite impressed with this when he realized that the prince in the play was supposed to kiss her hand. So, as you'd expect a prince to behave, he intrudes in the play dressed as a knight and fights the supposed prince. Then, when Shirayuki and Zen are at the staircase talking about stuff, she asks him to take out his hand. He does so, and Shirayuki then proceeds to grab and kiss his hand. This leaves Zen speechless as his eyes widen beyond belief. Shirayuki blushes as well and asks if it was too much for him. He wanted to reply, but their attention was then swayed by beautiful lanterns at the festival. Shirayuki runs toward the balcony and expresses how beautiful she thinks it is. Zen asks her if she'd ever seen them before, to which she replies yes, and so they both go outside to enjoy the festival again. And so he holds her hand and says they'll keep holding them until they are outside the festival. And just like that, the story of the first season ends with everyone gazing upon the beautiful lanterns. And that's the end of the video. As always, if you like what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos just like this, so I'll see you at the next one.
And I'm pretty sure that you are.